Hello, this is Catherine with Cat Math Tutoring, and before I start any Algebra 1 course, the first thing I talk about is adding and subtracting integers. So I'm going to go over a brief illustration of how to add and subtract integers. So adding integers has two cases. Case number 1 and case 2. Case number 1 is when you're adding numbers that have the same sign. So what I mean is, for example, say you have 5 plus 3. 5 plus 3, as you know, is 8. But sometimes you have negative 5 plus negative 3. So in case number 1, both numbers have the same sign. In this first example, A, think about this as money. You have $5 plus another $3. Altogether you have $8. In this one, in part B, you have negative $5, so you're in debt $5, and then you're adding another debt. So you have two big piles of debt you've got to pay off. So altogether your debt is negative 8. That's like your net worth. That's how much money you have altogether. But if you look at case number 2, case number 2 is when the numbers have different signs. For example, what if you have 5 plus negative 3? So I'm still talking about addition. And when I add these two integers with different signs, I like to think about this as money. Here I have $5 that I have, that's money. And here I have $3 of debt. Well, what is my net worth? How much money do I really have altogether? When I pay off this debt, I'm going to have $2 left over. So the answer is going to be a positive 2, because I have more positive money than negative money. I'll have some extra money left over. Let's look at this last case. What if I have negative 5 plus 3? Notice these numbers are still different signs, but here I have more debt than I have money. So when I pay off my debt here, I don't have enough positive money to pay this off. So I'm going to end up with still being in debt of $2. There's a poem that goes with this, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, but I just wanted to point out again, this case 1 is when these numbers have the same sign, and when they have the same sign, the answer is going to have that same sign as the number. Here you have $5 plus $3, so you have 8 positive dollars altogether. Case in this other example, here I have negative $5 plus negative $3, so altogether I have negative $8. That's case number 1. But if I look at case number 2, this is when I have different signed numbers. So here I have $5, but I'm taking away $3, or I have $3 of debt, and so I only have $2 of positive money. Here I start with $5 of debt, and I add $3, so I'm down $2 in debt. So there's a poem that one of my students told me about. I'm not sure where she heard it from, but I think it's a great way to remember these two different cases. So I'm going to write that down. So here's the first part of the poem. It goes, same signs, same sign, add, and keep. So what they mean by that is keep that common sign. That refers to case 1. When the numbers have the same sign, you want to add the number parts and then keep that common sign. Here you add the 5 and the 3, you get 8, and you keep the common sign, which is positive. And in part B, you have same sign, so you have a negative 3 and a negative 5. Those have the same sign. So you add the number parts, the 5 and the 3 is 8, and you keep that common sign, which is negative. The second case is when they have different signs. So here, when you have different signs, you subtract the numbers. The 5 minus 3 is 2. And the second part B says you think of it as 5 minus 3 is 2. So when you have different signs, like money, positive money and debt, you subtract the numbers and you keep the sign of the larger number. So for example, in this second case, you have a larger number, which is 5, and the negative sign is on that larger number, so your answer is going to have a negative number. In this other case, case A, or part A of case 2, here the larger number is 5 again, and that is positive, so that's why your answer is going to be positive. So that's what this part of the poem means. keep the sign of the larger number. If your larger number is positive, your answer is going to be positive. If your larger number is negative, your answer is going to be negative. So the whole poem goes, same sign, add and keep. Different sign, subtract. Keep the sign of the larger number, then you'll be exact. So sometimes you'll hear me say that when we're talking about adding and subtracting, well, adding integers. We'll get to subtraction in a minute. Here's the worksheet on adding integers, so we can go over some of those concepts that we just learned. So just remembering that the same sign, when you're adding integers with the same sign, you add the number parts and you keep that common sign. So let's look for some of those below. So some of them that have the same sign are, these have the same sign, these have the same sign, these you're adding and they have the same sign, these two you're adding and they have the same sign, these, most of them are positive. Let's see if we have any down here. Here's some, same sign, negative on the 9, negative on the 8, negative on the 8, negative on the 11. Here's some more with the same sign. So when I'm looking at those, I think of those as the same sorts of money. They're both, like in this first case, this is both positive money. This is $8 and another $10, so that's $18 altogether. Here's $10 and another $10, that's $20 altogether. In this example, I have a debt of $9 and a debt of $12. So I've got to add those two piles of debt together, and I'm going to have $21, but it's debt. So I'm remembering to put a negative sign in front of that. Let me write that a little better. So this would be negative $21. Here again, I have two big piles of debt I've got to add together. I've got negative $11 of debt and negative $9 of debt. So that's going to be a negative $20 altogether. Let's look at some of these over here. These are both positive money. So $6 and $2, that's going to be $8. This one, $12 and $12, that's going to be $24. Here's another one with two piles of debt. I have negative money and more negative money. So when I add those together, it's going to be a negative amount. And so 9 and 8 is 17. So it's going to be $17 of debt altogether. Let's take a look at some of the subtracting ones. Well, I shouldn't say that we're not really doing subtracting yet, but in case number 2, if you have different signs when you're doing adding of integers and you have different signs, then you want to subtract the number parts and then attach the sign of the larger number. So when I'm looking at some of those, here's 2 that have different signs, different signs, different signs, different signs, different signs. Ooh, those have the same sign. So when I look at this first one, the 11 and negative 12, I can see right away that it's going to be a negative number because I have more debt than I have money. So I have $11, but I have $12 of debt, so I don't have enough money to cover my debt. I'm going to be down $1. Another way to think about it is, since they have different signs, I'm going to subtract the numbers. 12 minus 11 have a difference of 1, but I'm going to keep the sign of the larger number. 12 is the larger number, absolute value-wise. It's the 12 is larger than 11, not including the sign. So I'm going to keep the sign of that number. So that's why I'm keeping the negative sign. In this example, I have 2 numbers with different signs. I have $10 of positive money and I have $9 of debt. So when I add these 2 numbers together, I want to subtract the number parts, which I'm talking about just the number parts without the sign, and 10 minus 9 is 1, and I want to keep the sign of the larger number, which is 10. So this is going to be a positive 1. You don't have to keep that positive sign there. If you just write a 1, it's implied to be a positive number. So here, different signs I subtract, I keep the sign of the larger number. Or you can think I don't have enough, or I do have enough money, I have $10, and that's going to be, I'm going to be able to cover my debt, and I'm going to have $1 left over. In this example, negative $9 plus $9, well, I have exactly enough money to pay off my debt, so I'm going to have 0, which is neither positive nor negative. Let's take a look at this example. So here I have $6 of regular money, $12 of debt. I don't have enough money to pay off my debt, so I have a lot of debt. I have $12 of debt. So when I subtract these numbers, as far as just the absolute value of the numbers, like 12 minus 6, they have a difference of 6. And I'm going to keep the negative sign because that's the sign of the larger number. So I have $6 of positive money and $12 of negative money of debt. So when I pay off my debt, I'm still in debt by $6. And sometimes when I have students do these, I just look at these different signed examples like this, and I just have them go through the signs. Like if I have negative 12 plus 8, is that going to be a positive or a negative number? Am I going to have money left over, or am I going to have debt? So in summary, when you're adding integers, there's really two main cases. This first case is when the numbers have the same sign, so that refers to this part of the poem. Same sign, add and keep. You add the numbers and you keep that common sign. And then the second case is when they have different signs. So case number 2, when the numbers have different signs, you subtract the numbers, just the absolute value of the numbers, the number parts, and you keep the sign of the larger number. So if you have more debt, you keep the negative sign. If you have more money, positive money, you keep the positive sign. So the poem goes, same sign, add and keep, different sign, subtract. Keep the sign of the larger number, then you'll be exact. So I would encourage you to practice a little bit each day. Don't practice the whole worksheet in one sitting, but do about 10 problems every day to really help cement this material. The next video I'll be doing subtracting integers.